So to everybody out there, welcome to Croke Park, to the Celtic Suite, to our community meeting. And my name is Nolene Blackwell. I have the honour to be the person who has been chairing these community meetings for a while. I've never chaired one as odd as this, where we're virtually distant, the three of us sitting up here, and where our audience is hopefully at home and hopefully you're all well. The last community meeting was just before the COVID restrictions kicked in. And at that stage, we were just talking a little bit about how scary it was in some ways. And I can't tell you how pleased I am that we're getting back to at least a stage where we're talking to each other, not in the best possible way, because the best possible way is the community would be in here as well for the conversation, but at least we're getting to some stage where things are progressing a little bit. I've missed seeing some of you, and I know that it has been a difficult time for some of you. Some of you have been ill. People have lost loved ones for various reasons. I'm truly sorry for all those who've suffered themselves or who've been bereaved or who've had to look after people who were ill as well. Hopefully you will be well and stay well, and it's part of the staying well bit that we're doing this meeting virtually. The main purpose of the meeting is to look at the proposed development, part of the development of Clonliffe Park, specifically the bit about the hotel. I'll come back to that in a second, but first of all I'm going to pass over to Peter McKenna to just bring us up to date maybe on a few things around Croke Park. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you very much, Nolene. And it's a very unusual arrangement this evening, and it is delighted to be able to talk to everybody. I just wanted to, I suppose, acknowledge that many of you watching it this evening have been given great support to the stadium, but particularly to the neighbours and to our community. I'd like to acknowledge that so many of you living locally are on the front line, that you have been part and parcel of the huge public response to COVID-19 as essential workers in those many different areas and professions that have been, unique, I think, in just their commitment to coping with this virus and just making everybody's life so much easier and so much responsive to the difficulties that the country has faced. I think all of us would like to acknowledge the local Gardaí and the Dublin City Council staff who coordinated many of the efforts to look after a number of the very vulnerable people in the community, and thank you sincerely for that. And to all of you who gave such huge support when we turned Croke Park into a walk-in centre, drive-through centre, and then the handball centre. I think the HSE here would love me to say to you, thank you for all the messages of support. I think we were inundated with emails and telephone calls, and even the messages that were put up in people's windows. It made a huge difference as the nurses and doctors and medical professionals came in, day out, to go through the testing process. And thank you, all of you, for those messages of support. It does make a difference. And I'd also like to share with Nolene, I know our deepest sympathies to many who have lost loved ones during the pandemic, but also before that. These are wonderful people that the community is going to be less because they're no longer with us. So for all of you who are grieving this evening, I'd like to offer our condolences and our sympathies and our prayers. And these are difficult times, and I hope that we'll all, as Nolene says, stay safe, and we'll see each other in the wide public arenas again. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Peter. So we're coming back to the purpose of this evening. And I do want to say, though, for those of you who are at home and who might like to be in here, we chose one of the wet evenings of this very dry spring and summer to come out. So you're probably just as well off to be at home. We are going to look at the proposed hotel development within the Clonliffe Road arena, because it's all that is ready to talk about at the moment. But before I turn to Shane Santry about that, can I check, Peter, where we are just in terms of an understanding of the rest of the development, or say, so we're going to talk this evening about the hotel because that is kind of nearly done and dusted and it's a separate development. But as for the rest of it, when do you think the community will be able to hear more about that, or where is it at?
So yeah, we spent some time with Dublin City Council and going through the master plan, and the master plan includes the hotel, and it is really the blueprint for the entire site. So the Dublin City Council have put in their various comments, and we're now anticipating that Hines, who are the developers for the overall site, will be able to present to the community around the 9th of July, and that's the date that Julianne, once it's confirmed, will circulate to the wider community, and they will talk in detail about what the plans and particulars are for the wide site. We have progressed the hotel development, and that's what we're hoping to take people through this evening, so that Shane, who's on the design team from the stadium perspective, is going to take everyone through what the hotel is going to look like, and we're going to put that in the context of an outline master plan that's there. But we didn't want to confuse things by having the two at the one time. Yeah. So today's presentation will focus on the hotel, and we welcome any questions that people would have to bring those through to and we'll be able to pick them up during the course of this webinar.
Okay, so on the question of on the subject of questions, as I understand it, Julianne has sent out the instruction about how you can put your questions to us, and you have an email address, or is it just straight to your email address, Julianne? Yeah, so to community@crokepark.ie or to Julianne's email address. Now, don't be phoning her because she can only manage the emails at this stage. So if you have questions in the course of it, please do send them through as soon as you think of them, because we'll be trying to bunch them and deal with them as best we can to deal with this before everybody gets too tired of the process. And so with that, I'm going to hand over to Shane now to take you through the hotel development, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Nolene. Thank you, Peter. I'm going to just take you through a number of slides that will outline and illustrate the design and proposal for the hotel as part of the site. As part of this, we have an open day next Saturday, and I think that starts at 10 o'clock in the morning. And we'll be here to address questions on that at that appropriate time. So if I go through the slides, if we can load up the slides, I'll go through them one by one. So this is a proposal by Croke Park. It will be a 200-bedroom hotel, and the next slide illustrates the partners involved in the development. So we have Delata will be the operator of the hotel, and below that are the various other design and consulting experts that have been involved and will be involved in the delivery of this 200-bedroom hotel. So next slide, and next slide again. So this is the site. On the left-hand side is an aerial photograph of Clonliffe College and grounds, which many of you will be familiar with. On the left-hand side, running on a north-south direction, is the Drumcondra Road, and the site is bordered on the south by the Clonliffe Road. The area outlined in red on the bottom right-hand side is the site. So if we move to the slide on the right, you can see the red outline of the site, which borders the Clonliffe Road. The site is approximately 12,000 square metres in area, and this will form the entrance into the greater development. The rest of the site is being developed in partnership with Hines, who are an international development company who have particular expertise in the delivery of residential units. I understand that they will be presenting their ideas and proposals for the rest of the site at a later stage. So if we move on to the next slide, this gives an impression and an overview of the entire development and campus. What this slide demonstrates is the primary focus was to retain all of or as many of the trees as possible. So the idea is to keep as much of the existing infrastructure on the site. So we maintain the treescapes, the landscaping, the flora and fauna that exists on the site, and in the pockets that remain are where the buildings will be placed and constructed. The site is predominantly residential, but you will note at the top north end of the top of the sheet there, you will see that there are 2 GAA pitches and a clubhouse which will be provided as part of this facility. All of this part of the site is not yet developed in terms of design, and that's ongoing and being developed in consultation with Hines and other entities. So tonight we'll focus on the bottom right-hand corner, which is the hotel site. Next slide, please. So again, this is shows the split up and the various ownerships on the left-hand side, and who will be responsible for the various aspects of ownership within the overall campus. And the slide on the right again just illustrates the location of the hotel, which will front out onto Jones's Road. The site here is outlined in red, which again shows that it's located at the existing entrance into the campus, which comes in off the confluence of roads between Jones's Road and Clonliffe Road, and the site will be to the right-hand side. Next slide, please. So these are existing views. So photograph A is the one on the top right, and it shows a photograph looking back out towards the entrance. And photograph B is taken from the entrance looking back into the site, which shows the existing condition within the site. Next slide. This is a photograph taken from Jones's Road, looking back up at the site, showing the existing wall and the existing entrance as they exist today. Next slide, please. So the proposal for the hotel needs to take on board and respect the existing infrastructure and environment and built heritage that surrounds the area. So this slide illustrates the frontage of the hotel will align with the existing houses along Clonliffe Road. So the red slide and the red panel indicates the alignment of that geometry and symmetry to show that the hotel is set back from Jones's Road in the same manner as the existing houses. Next slide, please. This slide illustrates just the exact location of the site and where it sits in relation to the road. Next slide. This demarks, the red demarks the entrance to the hotel. The active frontage is on the front, facing out onto out onto Clonliffe Road. This is a patio area that I'll take you through later on. I'll show you our plans for that, which involve lots of heavy landscaping and a visual amenity to Clonliffe Road. Next slide, please. This illustrates that we're keeping the existing trees that exist along the entrance road into Clonliffe development. So the existing trees that you see today will all be maintained along this avenue on both sides, and they provide a softening of the building, and it means that we can craft the building into the existing landscape and thereby give the appearance that it isn't a new build, and it'll soften it in terms of giving the impression that the building has been settled into the site for quite a period. Next slide. So this slide illustrates some of the architectural elements that will be used on the building. The hotel will be predominantly brick, which is the existing characteristic of the houses along Clonliffe Road. So the majority of the elevations will be finished in a brick finish. The windows will obviously be glazing. The entrance will take its architectural nod from the stadium in terms of material, scale, bulk and mass. And along the spine road on the western elevation, which is the long elevation coming in along the entrance road, there is a loggia or colonnade which will take its nod from the existing architecture that exists in the seminary building and the courtyard to the rear of that existing building. Next slide. So this illustrates how the design evolved or morphed from the various forms that were looked at before we arrived at the current proposal that I'm presenting tonight. So this takes you through, we've tried various forms and formats, ranging from reinforcing the corner element to trying to dilute that through to the blurring of the threshold at the entrance to the site to allow more permeability as people move along Clonliffe Road and enter into the site. We want this to be a signpost building that welcomes people into the greater development, because this overall development and campus will be part of the public realm and will be encouraged. The existing population and the existing neighbourhood will be encouraged to use the facilities within the campus, as will the hotel, which will be open to the public. Next slide. Again, this again shows the elements of the design in terms of the horizontality and the verticality of the building. So you will note that the building steps back up from the street. So at the street level in Clonliffe, it respects the scale and character of the existing houses, and as it moves back, it gains in height, but this lessens the impact of the height on the Clonliffe Road and on the existing houses, so it blends itself back into the landscape as part of the overall development. Thank you. Next slide. Again, this slide, I suppose, illustrates the major architectural elements, showing how the building will have lots of glass to the front. You can see the existing landscaping to the left and right of the slide, and the entrance is announced to the side. So the entrance won't open out onto Clonliffe Road. It works at 90 degrees to that. So again, it just lessens the impact of the entrance and egress and the major element of activity, which would be the access and egress from the hotel, and that doesn't interfere or complicate the patio area out onto Clonliffe Road. Thank you. Next slide. Again, this is an artist's impression of how the building will look in isolation. Again, you can see it's now beginning, the form and format of the slides are beginning to represent what we understand to be a building, and you can see the major elements being the rhythm of the windows to the bedroom, the entrance location on the ground floor, and then some tables and patio area that open out onto the front, which provide an animation and an activity to the front, which also provides a passive surveillance to the street element. So again, we feel that this offers an element of security and engagement with the street, so that again at night time there is an element of engagement. So the hotel major elements on the ground floor being the reception open out onto this area, so again it provides an element of engagement with the street, so anyone using the public streets feels relatively safe, because there is passive surveillance going on through the animation of the hotel, and likewise people can see what's going on in the hotel from the street. So it blends into the community. Next slide, please. This we're now getting into the technical element, and this shows the roof plan and how the building sits within the site. To the left-hand side is a building which will be a residential building. That's not yet designed, and that really is only a placeholder at this stage. That form will be developed by the other partners in the development, which are Hines, and it will form part of their development. Our site shows on the right-hand side, outlined in red, is the roof plan, which shows how the roof steps down as it moves back down to the ground level. Next slide. Again, this is the ground floor layout. So this slide illustrates, in blue is the public areas, which will be the restaurant area and the bar area, and the public reception. So the reception desk is located in there. On the right-hand side of the plan, there is the back-of-house offices and WC facilities. And to the top of the plan, the north, are all the other back-of-house, being the plant room, the staff room, staff changing, and the electrical rooms. But we've tried to keep as much glazing along the west and southern boundaries. So again, as people walk in, there's the ability to see in and out of the hotel. So there's an engagement both from within and without the building, that you can see engagement outside and you can see animation inside the building. So to make it as transparent as possible and open this up to the users and the entrance to the site. Thank you. Next slide. This is a slide that it's the upper floors, and there'll be a repetition. This illustrates the bedrooms. So all the bedrooms are on the perimeter. They're on the west elevation and the south elevation, which allows the windows to open out and engage and overlook the road, both the Clonliffe Road and the new entrance road, without causing any overlooking issues. So the predominance of all the floors is for the bedrooms to be on these axes. And the next slide, please. Again, illustrates as the floor goes up, there's a repeat of the same plan layout, which shows the bedroom and a central corridor. Thank you. Next slide. And again, as we move up through the building, you can see this repetition until we get to the top. So, next slide. So what I'm going to take you through now are a series of montages, photo montages. So these are artists' impressions of how the building will look in its context, taken from various locations that you'll all be familiar with, being Jones's Road and Clonliffe. This first slide shows the area where the photographs are taken from. And what we've done is we've shown we have a before and after. So to give you a certain familiarity with what will be proposed, we'll show the existing condition and then the proposed condition. So next slide, please. So this is the view up Jones's Road as it exists today. This is taken from just under the bridge. So one will see the familiar punctuation at the top of the road, which is the existing entrance into the Clonliffe College. And the familiar blue gates can be seen with the red brick columns. This is the proposed, and the next slide shows the, sorry, this is the existing, the next slide shows the proposed. So there's not much to see here. What you see on this slide is the opening up of the gates. The gates get slightly wider. And for those keen observers, you will see just over the top of one of the trees is the beginning of the outline of the hotel. And I'll show you as we move further up Jones's Road how that might manifest itself and appear. So the next slide, please. So this slide just shows the outline of some of the building as it might appear beyond that, which will be the top of the apartment units, which have yet to be designed and finalised. Next slide, please. So again, we're back to just other aspects and other views that might be taken. So if I go through the next slide, we'll get a closer in view. So again, Jones's Road, looking in at the entrance to the site, the familiar blue gates and the trees that we're going to maintain. This entrance is important to us and the developers, that we maintain the existing trees along this landscape to provide a breathing lung and anchoring of the buildings within the context of the development. Next slide. Now, this, you see the appearance of the hotel and the scale of it relative to the trees. Again, the familiar use of the brick, which ties in with the existing architectural materials of the locality for the houses, and the glazing looking back out over the road. Next slide. This outline in red on the left-hand side shows the residential unit that will form part of the next phase of this development. So what we have is we have these two buildings forming a gateway into the site. So they repeat the smaller gateway that you see at the lower level with the pillars is repeated in an architectural form through the left and right of the twin buildings that form the entrance. And these two buildings will have, I suppose they'll use the same materials and will be the same form, bulk and mass, so they begin to have a conversation in relation to those aspects in terms of materials, so they match and they begin to blend in. Next slide. Again, an alternative view from further back on Jones's Road. So the next slide will illustrate the view as you look directly onto the hotel, taking in the corner of Jones's Road. So the existing condition with the blue, and the next slide shows the hotel. So the hotel, again, sitting into the site, forming this entrance, the stepped, shouldered approach, wedding cake narrative of the hotel in terms of how it might appear from the street. As mentioned before, it's a 200-bedroom hotel. is circa 8,000 square meters, which in old school language, I think if I remember from my maths, is something in and around 8,500 square feet. But next slide. Again, just shows the softening of the hotel through the landscaping out the front and to the side of the hotel. The scale of the trees, it sits in with those trees which are not the tallest trees on the site, and I'll show those in a later slide, but it begins to show how we're anchoring the building within the existing context of the natural environment. Thank you. Next slide. Again, some further views. Next slide. So again, the closer into the hotel, this is probably the most prominent view people will see of Jones's Road, and the next slide will show you how the hotel sits into that. So again, you see the appearance of the new entrance. The existing fencing along is supposed to be transparent, so visually there's no, it reduces the opaqueness of the existing conditions of the site, so we can begin to see into the site now through the railings and through various openings. So we create a permeability that allows people feel that they can engage with this hotel, and it becomes a more welcoming approach and entrance and threshold into the site. Next slide, please. Again, this just begins to show the outline of the building to the left, to show the conversation between the two, so there's a certain symmetry in the entrance as people walk in. Next slide. Again, this is a view looking up Clonliffe Road towards the Drumcondra junction. Next slide. So again, the existing Clonliffe Road, you see the cars parked either side. The existing format of the houses is brick and glazing, and that's the existing. And now the proposed, you begin. Next slide, you begin to see the hotel beginning to poke out from behind the trees using the same materials which blend it in, and you can so from this it's you're beginning to see how the building might anchor itself within the development of the existing treescape. Next slide, please. And next slide. Thank you. And again, we'll take a closer in view of that now through the next slide. Again, you begin to see the existing condition of the houses to the right. The trees are all being maintained along, and the next slide shows the hotel as it sits in amongst those trees. So through the use of the natural landscape and the brick material, we're beginning to see a blending of this hotel that we hope will add to the character of the area and enhance and protect the existing character of the area. Thanks. Next slide. And again. Okay. And again, this is a view from inside the site looking back out. So once you're inside the Clonliffe campus, you're looking back out towards Jones's Road and Clonliffe Road. This is the building as it will appear from the rear elevation. So what we have is we have 6 stories up to a shoulder height, and then the building steps in with another floor added to the top. You can see there's a familiar use of the brick, and the window proportions are the same as the existing Victorian streetscape, so it becomes a little bit more familiar. The ground floor here element will be, at this end of the building, is a staff canteen, which again provides a level of engagement, so the staff using this will have a surveillance ability out over the existing confluence of roads that exists at this area. So again, there's an element of, I suppose, comfort in that all of this is overlooked at ground level and animated at ground level. So it becomes a comfortable space to use and welcomes people within. On the right-hand side, you can see the maintenance of the existing trees along the entrance avenue, which is quite important. Next slide, please. Again, this is a view back out on Clonliffe Road. I'm going to show you as we look up with our backs to Drumcondra, looking up towards the Clontarf end. You can see the existing familiar brick wall that exists along there, and I think it's not unfair to say that this was always an impediment to entry into the Clonliffe area, that this provided a very opaque ability for people to engage with the site beyond the gates. So we're hoping to break that down, and you'll see through the next slide this opening up of the development and softening of that fencing arrangement. So again, we're trying to open up the Clonliffe grounds as much as possible to welcome people within the development. Next slide, please. Again, the outline shows the relationship of the new building to our building, which is yet to be designed. And next slide. Okay, this is a closer in view, a further away view I'm going to show you now, and I alluded earlier on to the existing trees and the scale. So here you see the existing trees which run left to right at the end of the existing housing, which provided the scale for our development. So the next slide shows the proposal as it sits within there. So you can see it, and the next slide again, the hotel sits below this existing treescape. So next slide. And now I'm going to touch on the landscaping. So again, this top slide shows the imposing wall that existed around the development. And the slide below shows the removal of this wall and the reinstatement with a railing, which is more visually transparent and allows the trees to be more visually evident, and again softens the appearance. The buildings on left and right are bleached out to exaggerate the appearance or enhance the appearance of the trees and the fencing. So they're not in this slide and the next couple of slides. The emphasis will be on the landscaping. So the next slide. This shows the open patio area that we're going to provide in the front of the hotel. So the ground floor of the hotel is glazed and has the restaurant and the reception area. So we see this as an area that will open out during the day, during the summer months, not unlike the day that Nolene has pointed out outside. So hopefully not many days like today, but on the two clear sunny days we are guaranteed in our summer, we can have coffee and teas and lunches and breakfast served out on this area. So again, it animates the street, it provides an active engagement with members of the public and provides a more interesting and more welcoming vista than currently exists with the existing wall. You can see the trees dotted around there, so it'll be heavily landscaped. The slides down below begin to show some of the materials and the design steps that might be taken to enhance this area, which is quite important to the overall development because this forms the entrance and the first impression, the shopfront people get as they enter into this development. Next slide, please. Again, this shows on the bottom left-hand side the existing avenue with the trees as it runs up, and they'll be maintained. On the right-hand side is some parking and how the parking will be also bolstered with new planting of hedging to soften that area. So that there isn't this emphasis on the cars as people look out from the hotel and as people meander up and wander through the campus. Next slide. This shows again how the tables and chairs might work at the ground floor opening out. So you see this use of umbrellas, landscaping, the changes in level, but the heavy emphasis is on the flora and fauna. Particular attention has been given to the implementation and delivery of the natural landscape in this area. So what we've engaged through a particular landscape architect, Niall Montgomery and Partners, who have an international reputation in relation to the delivery of projects of this scale. And through their wonderful design, we've now arrived at this softening and almost countryside feel, which softens the approach, the threshold and the appearance of this. So it makes it a welcoming space, but also a space that you want to sit out in. So it becomes an area that people want to partake in, both from a visual interaction and a physical interaction through the use of the restaurant and breakfast area. And the next slide then again shows as this landscaping and how the landscaping dominates the entrance to this, so it softens the appearance and again opens up the development. And again, the next slide again is another one showing the landscaped area without the tables and chairs, but again you can see that the focus is on the landscaped area and the landscaping to be provided as part of this. And then the last slide is stepping back, just showing all of those elements combined as one, showing the landscaping and the building as it stands, and that finishes the presentation.
Thanks a million, Shane. Thank you for taking us through that. Now, that was a lot of slides and a lot of information. Shane mentioned the open day that's happening on Saturday. Now, I have here from Julianne, who's acting as floor manager, I have a thing that's starred important message. Just a reminder to people, you would have got this message already, that due to the COVID restrictions, you need an appointment to come in to the open day on Saturday. You can't just walk up to go and look at the display stands and to answer the questions. A lot of appointments, I think, have been taken up already, but there's a small number of appointments available still. And if you are interested, you need to contact Julianne this evening by email and to just tell her if you want one of those appointments. And because a lot have been taken up already and because we are restricted, it can't be guaranteed that you will get an appointment. But I think what we will be trying to do is to make sure that everyone has time to absorb those slides as time goes by. And then it will be later seen in the context of the bigger development. Okay, so loads and loads of questions came in, and some of them actually came in before Shane dealt with them. But Shane, I think it's worth going over again, even some of the questions that you might. So don't yell at me and say,
repetition is a good thing.
I'm asking you to repeat yourself or anything like that. We'll do our best to get through. So just can you remind us how many stories high is, so I'm reading out the questions now, which again my floor manager, Julianne Savage, has kindly given to me. How many stories high is the hotel, and what is the height relative to the existing trees?
Okay, so the hotel starts at the front. It's two to 3 stories at the front. So we have a double height space on the ground floor and then a floor over at the same symmetry as the houses. And then as it steps back, it gets back up to 6 stories, which is what we call, and forgive me for using an architectural term here, Nolan, but it's shoulder height. So we take it back up to 6 stories, and then there's a further story on that which is set back in. So what I mean by shoulder height, it comes to there, and then the top floor is pulled back in, so there's no overlooking.
So it goes from between 2 and 3 stories at the base, which is roughly the height of the houses on the Clonliffe Road, up to 6 stories behind that, and up to a 7th story in further behind that.
That's it, yes.
Okay, very good. Now, so a lot of the questions are around parking and traffic. So I'll just go and try and bunch those a little bit. Where is the parking going to be, and what is the parking capacity? You mentioned that there would be parking spaces which would be softened by trees, but how many spaces will there be, and where is it relative to the road?
So we've restricted the amount of car parking within the development in line with the Dublin City guidelines. The focus now is on public transport for this building, but we have to provide some element of car parking. So the car parkings, there'll be 38 car parking spaces, of which 2 of which will be disabled parking. There'll be some motorbike parking, and there will be, I think, from memory, in excess of 200 bicycle spaces. The parking is located immediately to the east, which is the right-hand side of the plan that you saw. So it'll be when I was presenting the slides, we had the road, and then we had the building, and then on the opposite side we'll have the car parking, only on the ground floor element, and only 38 spaces.
Okay, and will all traffic use Clonliffe Road?
Yes.
All hotel traffic use Clonliffe Road.
Yes, that's yeah, and that will be an absolute. There will be no other traffic coming in from any other direction.
Okay. Now, is there an estimate of how much that? I presume you had to do some sort of an estimate of the increased traffic.
We have done an analysis on that. That's not yet finalised, and that will form part of our planning application. But we think because there's only 38 car parking spaces, there won't be that much increase in the demand and capacity of the existing road infrastructure out there because we're relying on public transport. We're near a DART station. There's buses and there's taxis, obviously. But in line with Dublin City Council's policy, we've tried to restrict that and put the emphasis on a more sustainable public transport approach.
Okay, but will the traffic include buses, say coaches and things like that? Will there be parking spaces for coaches?
No, so
at the hotel?
there'll be a coach drop-off area, there's no coach parking as part of this application.
But coaches will drop off people to go into the hotel,
Yeah.
and that will also increase the traffic. Do you have to put in something about that? Do you have to identify the impact on traffic?
Yeah, so that will all form part of our documentation. It's rather technical. We have some preliminary figures, but I felt it might just be too much to present in the format today. It's important to remember, though, that the coach parking forms part of the coach delivery. There'll be no coach parking. The coach delivery and bus delivery of people to the hotel is part of our sustainable approach, because we can deliver up to 60 people, drop them off, and the coach goes elsewhere.
Yeah.
So it is part of our strategy.
But if you had 4 coaches coming one after another, that would have an impact that one coach wouldn't. So I don't want to press you on something that you can't say at the moment, but is it likely that you would be able to tell people roughly what the percentage increase traffic-wise would be?
Yeah,
There's a lot of questions around traffic.
I think we can get that information out there,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, and just to I suppose, to emphasise or to address your question about 4 coaches arriving at once, it's a 200-bedroom hotel, so from the hotel's point of view, they can't take more than one coach coming every hour, because any more than that and they just get slammed. So in terms of the normal operation of the hotel, that shouldn't happen.
I know.
Probably won't.
It's just as and when you're able to give an assessment of the impact, it'd be good. Now, somebody then asked a kind of a related question: where will the taxi drop-off be located?
Again, the taxi, there is a loop provided as part of this, so a taxi will turn in the main existing entrance that you see. It'll go up the tree-lined avenue. There's a little roundabout at the top where it'll swing around, and there's a drop-off area immediately outside the hotel, which will be like a little lay-by. The taxi will pull in their drop-off and then goes back about their business.
And then go back on the street. Now, actually, you spoke about public transport and sustainability, but somebody makes the point that at present there are no public transport options available on Clonliffe Road. There is, of course, the station, there is on the Drumcondra Road, and there is on Ballybock Road, but there's nothing on Clonliffe Road as well. And the question is, have the developers engaged with DCC over that issue? I presume they've had to engage over traffic to and from the hotel, but has that been raised at all?
Yeah.
It's a very big road. I've often thought that there were even a couple of bus stops on it at one stage.
Yeah.
There's no buses.
There are. Sorry, to answer your question, yes, there are. We have engaged with Dublin City Council, and that's ongoing in relation to what we're providing to the hotel. I don't know, and I can't answer the question if there is proposals to provide any further buses along there. But I suppose the way the government and the Dublin City Council policy works at the moment is it works on the basis of you being within 500 metres of a fixed rail station, which we are now. I know for some people that's quite a lot to walk, but unfortunately that's outside our remit.
Okay. And is it the question here is it a 4-way traffic light system proposed for the junction? And I'm assuming that's the junction of Clonliffe Road and Jones's Road.
Yeah, that's not finalised yet, so that level of detail hasn't gone in, and that really needs further engagement with Dublin City Council, and so that's not something that is available at this stage.
And then turning to the only thing that hasn't been asked about is walk-in, but you dealt with that. But will the bike racks be removed from the street in front of the hotel?
Yes. So the bike racks are all located back towards the rear of the hotel, so they won't be seen from the front, and they're in a secluded area, a masked-off area, so they won't be visible from the street.
Okay. And the another question, has safe cycling infrastructure been considered, and if so, how?
Yeah, there will be. I know from our initial discussions with Heinz that certainly walking and cycling was very important to them as part of their overall development, and it is to the front of their minds and certainly of primary contemplation to them in terms of the overall development.
Yeah, okay. Now, then there's a couple of questions just about the construction programme. What is the construction programme? Has that been decided?
Yeah, so so I suppose it's the short answer is no, because it's unknown what will happen in terms of the planning process. So we've no idea how DCC will deal with this and if there'll be any conditions. But I suppose my own opinion would be that probably we're looking at a 2-year build. I think that in and around that, but out of that, I would have said that the last year of that will be all internal works. So really, we're talking about the major infrastructure would take 12 months, and after that, you'll be dealing with inside works, fit out of the hotel.
Okay, so this is going to a planning application to DCC.
Yeah, so this will form. Yeah, so
okay.
So this will form a normal planning application with Dublin City Council. The housing aspect that Heinz will be engaging in with is under what's called an SHD, and that actually goes straight to An Bord Pleanála.
What's an SHD when it's at home? I'm going to ask you the hard question.
No, so what that is, that's a piece of legislation that was brought in. So what it allows for, once a housing development goes above 100 units, the SHD, which is strategic housing development.
Okay, thank you.
Because
yeah, that's what I wanted. Yeah, all right. Okay, so that's going straight to An Bord Pleanála. And on the question of the construction, is there any plan for specific local employment during the construction of the hotel?
Yeah, it's always been the policy, I think, of Croke Park and the GA to try and engage as much with the local community and put money back into the local area. So I would imagine nothing has changed in terms of that, and that will form part of any agreement with the local area. And certainly we've had that. If we haven't, we will have that discussion with Heinz, and they're keen to get an involvement. You know, they're going to be opening this up to the local area. So I believe they'll be willing partners.
Okay, but there's nothing actually fixed about that yet. That's something.
Maybe
still,
just be more specific about that, Nolene.
Yeah.
What we're trying to do here, and then we're doing this through Michael Stone, who the local community would know well, and he's been working strongly on local employment initiatives. Yeah. That it's not so much just giving people the opportunity to work on the site, it's to go that step further, where we'll be providing apprenticeships and insisting that those apprenticeships are concluded, because the building will probably be finished before the apprenticeship is, and how those apprenticeships then continue throughout the course. Okay. So that is part of the philosophy that we have when we're looking at this build. Yeah.
Okay. So that's kind of built into the basic memorandum of understanding or whatever that's there.
And,
okay.
Michael, as I say, who people know well, is well versed in the best way of doing this, so that the opportunities are real and lasting, rather than just a percentage.
A one-off 6-month employment or whatever. Okay, great. Shane, back to you in terms of water pressure, actually. Somebody makes the point there are intermittent issues with water pressure in the area, and have Irish Water and DCC commented on whether this development will affect the area any further?
So yes, in terms of that, we have started our engagement with Irish Water and DCC. So we've informed them of what the development will be, and the whole issue of water pressure, both from incoming water and then the capacity of the existing drainage facility, both surface and foul, will form part of the planning application. But the initial feedback from Irish Water is positive in that regard. In that there won't be any drop, and we will meet the standards required.
How can you do that if as it stands there is pressure on the water?
Because what will happen as part of this overall development is the developer, DCC, as part of their planning application, and An Bord Pleanála, if they see fit to grant this, will have financial contributions attached to the planning permission. So there'll be some financial contributions be paid by the applicant, which will go towards the upgrading of the existing infrastructure,
Okay.
both in terms of drains and water
Oh,
supply.
okay, okay. Now, trees, there are a couple of questions around trees, and I hope I've got them all. And again, I think, Julianne, you'll probably come back to me if I've missed anything big. Is the tallest tree on the site being retained? Now, I don't know whether that is an actual tree, or is it just like, are you keeping the tall trees?
Yeah, I think there is one tree to be removed as part of this, but out of that, all of the other trees are being kept on the site. And I'm not sure when you talk about the tallest tree, I actually don't know what the tallest tree is.
Yeah.
But certainly we are keen initially when we approach this to keep the trees, because it provided a scale and a masking for us for our building. So the existing treescape is important to us for both an ecological reason and an architectural reason.
Okay.
Maybe just to add to that,
Yeah.
if I may, Nolene.
Yeah.
I mean, residents would have noticed in the last couple of weeks there have been a number of trees that have been felled.
Yes.
So
That's another question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well,
good.
just
Yeah.
at
Deal with
the
it now,
start
that's
of this
great. That's great,
process,
yeah.
we engaged an arborist, a specialist in tree management, tree conservation, and they did a very, very comprehensive report, part of which will be part of our application. But they identified a number of trees that had were health and safety issues associated with them. So those trees have been pruned out while the city was on lockdown. It was a very safe time to do it. So that has happened over the last couple of weeks. And again, all based on a very comprehensive arborist report.
Okay. And I can't think of anything that I'd understand less, but is it possible to kind of get a summary of that report at some stage, or, might that be made available to people if they're really interested in it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
great.
And I know one or two individuals are extraordinarily interested in
Yeah.
it, so that will be available, and welcome any other comments that people would have on it.
Okay. But the only ones that were felled, Peter, were ones that were unsafe and that needed to be.
That is correct.
Yeah, okay, very good. So that is the background information. I'm staying with trees for a minute, and it seemed from the slides, but what is the height of the tree of the stories, say, particularly the ones nearest the road, by comparison with the existing trees, Shane?
I just don't have those figures to hand. I don't want to guess at speculate at a figure.
Okay, because when I looked at some of the slides, it looked like the trees were at the same height as the front of the building, but it's just.
I think the building will come slightly above the trees on the existing avenue, but the big, large, mature trees on the west of the site, our building will be below that height.
Okay. Oh, right. Okay. So, yeah. Okay, very good. Now, here's moving on to something else. Oh, yeah, just in terms of trees still, will there be penalties in the building contract should any of the trees be damaged? Do you know the way sometimes a tractor can accidentally knock into?
No, look, I can't answer that on the basis that that hasn't been contemplated in terms of the building contract, but like we would be under obligation to Dublin City Council in respect of the existing trees. We've told them we're going to keep them, so this, we have a reputation to keep in this. So once we give a commitment to Dublin City Council on something, we'll have to hold.
Yeah, and you'll have to have backup measurements and ways of making sure that you're not caught. The builder.
So I think, look, there is, I think the overall development will actually enhance the amount of planting that goes in. So there'll be new trees and new species, and new shrubs and new landscaping provided as part of this. So it's certainly going to be well populated with trees over and above what's there at the moment.
Yeah, but the aim is to keep any trees that are there at the moment.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. And that was the the initial concept for the design. That was the first move that was made, was the as I outlined at the start, was we looked at the site and we looked at where the existing tree pattern was. We kept those, and in the spaces in between is where we've allocated the buildings.
Okay. Now, how will the development affect Cornmill Apartments that overlook the site?
Okay. I'm not sure how to answer that, in that the Cornmill is quite a distance away from us. Certainly this new development will be seen from that, but in terms of distances, I can't see any overshadowing or any overlooking issues that would be caused by this.
Yeah.
I think I think there'll probably be little or no impact because you'll have 2 GA pitches at that corner.
Okay.
So that that side, which then backs onto the Belvedere rugby pitch,
Yeah.
and then to
All
Cornmill.
right.
So I don't see any impact.
Okay, but again, if whoever asked that question is booked in to come in for to look at the plans on Saturday, they might be able to see it more quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, you just got through.
We were flipping through stuff very quickly there, Nolene, and it's very difficult to grasp all the information. Yeah.
Okay, a couple of questions just, I think, really about the running of the hotel or the within the hotel. Is there going to be a coffee or a breakfast area and open bar on the Clonliffe roadside? Yeah,
Yes,
that's a good
yes.
question. It looked like
Yeah,
it
it
was.
is. So the idea is on the ground floor is where all the hospitality, food and beverage aspects of the hotel are. So there is a reception on the ground floor, and then there's a bar and a restaurant area. And the idea is that we want to provide it as much glazing as possible along the front of the hotel, so that allows it to open. So we can allow people to spill out on a summer's day. They can sit out on the patio in our pale blue grey skin and pretend that we're on the Riviera.
Yeah, but equally, you'd be able to get a cappuccino if that's all you want, when eventually that becomes a thing again.
I don't know what a cappuccino is, but you'll certainly get Barry's tea.
All right. If you're coming in from the road, rather than if you're a hotel resident. That's great. And in terms of what the hotel will have, one of the questions is, will the hotel have a gym and pool? And if so, will residents be able to get a membership of that on, I imagine, on competitive grounds, on good rates. No pool.
No pool.
No pool.
And the gym, if the gym progresses, will be a small hotel style gym.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't really be suitable for mass usage.
It won't be kind of like a public gym. Yeah.
No,
Okay. Great. Now, I have two questions left, and I really want to keep them to the end, Julianne. So, do you want to just? I think we deserve to see the floor manager. Come here. All right.
She hasn't spent 4 hours in makeup like the rest of us.
So just these I haven't kind of sorted. So, but let me just go back to traffic for a minute. How will traffic be managed on match days?
So on match days, that will form the normal regime, and I think Peter is better equipped to answer that, but it'll be in consultation with the Gardaí, but maybe, Peter, you might address that.
Yes, so the Gardaí put a number of restrictions down depending on the size of the event in the stadium. So for the very big events, that from Drumcondra Road and in, it's all got off after a particular time.
Yeah.
The parking that we normally engage with in Clonliffe College, that will cease once the development is finished. So we only be using that for 6 times during the year.
Yeah.
And then to a maximum of 500 vehicles.
Yeah.
So we were putting natural restrictions into it. Again, this is a response to the environmental issues which we think are becoming more and more important in the life of the city.
Yeah, and I might then stay with you. It might be suitable for you to answer this one as well. Somebody's questioning the 38 parking spaces and saying, is that sufficient for 200 bedrooms? But again, it sounds to me that's more to the sustainability thing, that in fact parking isn't going to be encouraged. Will I go back to you on that, Shane?
So it forms part of an overall government and local authority strategy to try and, I suppose, be more sustainable about how we engage with the city. And there was a move about 10 years ago to restrict the amount of car parking that was allocated to both residential units and hotels. So in this instance, we're trying to rely on public transport. So 38, it will work at 38. The operator is happy that they can make it work at 38. Dublin City Council are happy. And I think it's been demonstrated through other hotels in the city that you don't need car parking for this to work.
Yeah.
And there's less reliance on this, and I think that's good for for all of us, and better for the city and better for the environment.
Okay, and there's a question here, where will coaches park? My understanding is coaches won't park there
No,
at all.
there's no parking. So
Yeah.
coaches, it'll be a drop-off area, so there'll be no coach parking. So coaches will form part, they'll go back to wherever they came from in terms of their...
Yeah,
A good example there would be the operation of the existing hotel just
Yeah.
across from the Hogan stand. So the coaches pull in, people disembark, and the coach moves away.
Yeah.
It doesn't park on site.
okay, great. Now, what star rating will the hotel be?
4-star.
4-star. Okay, very good. Now, another issue, and Shane, I don't want to hurt your feelings or anything.
Is this about my tie?
No, it's not about your tie. It's the render of the building is what's ongoing here, and the point is that it's very standard. Was a more striking design considered, and could it be rendered white?
It was, and there was a lot of attention and a lot of detail and a lot of sweat put into the appearance of the hotel. And the overall view was, rather than present a building that screamed, "Look at me," and became a kind of focus of attention, we wanted something that would blend in. And through engagement with the planners and the city architects, we arrived in the idea that brick and the use of that as the primary building element within the area was the most appropriate finish
Okay.
on that hotel.
Okay, there you are. That's that answer. Thank you for that. Now, will and again, I don't know whether you can say this at this stage, but will the design of the hotel inform the development of the whole estate?
Yeah, I think what the approach taken was, certainly at the only building that's fully developed in terms of design at the moment is the hotel. The rest of them are a little bit behind in terms of their sense of development. But yes, certainly the building at the entrance will have a similar feel in terms of the materials. And I think what we'd like to do is, like all great cities, rather than get into an element that there's a homogenous look across this, the Hines have engaged a number of different architectural firms to design different buildings, so there'll be a different feel.
Yeah.
Like all cities, the wonderful thing about wandering around a city is that as you come around a corner, you see something different or something unusual, and there's a counterpoint, a balance, and it makes it more interesting. So I think that's the approach.
Okay, so the second last question I have is, why is this planning application going on ahead of the rest of the site? And is that for you, Peter, or is it for you, Shane? Shane,
Well,
yeah.
maybe we can both answer
You
it.
start, and
Peter will
supplement as necessary.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I suppose to answer that question is that this hotel is the only commercial element as part of this development, and it's a standalone site. The rest of it is slightly larger, and while we all started the design at the same time, some things take a little bit longer because the Hines partners have a lot more buildings to develop and design, and they all need to look at drainage, they need to look at road infrastructure, they need to look at the individual design of those buildings. So it's not unusual that would happen given the scale of it. So it just happens that we're first up and best dressed in relation to the scale of our building relative to anything on Hines. But I understand, and Peter might confirm, that Hines will be coming along shortly afterwards, within a matter of weeks, to present their scheme to us.
Yeah, and the other important point is that the mass housing development that Hines are engaged in is covered by NSHD. So that goes through a very different planning process.
Wait till we see if I
Housing
remember.
development.
Strategic housing development, yes.
So that goes through a different planning process. This is, we go through the normal planning process of putting plans and particulars in front of Dublin City Council. People can make their observations and so on. So that's the reason that the two are different tracks.
So if you looked at that the other way, this is going to be a bit slower because the other one will be going straight to on board Planola.
Well, possibly, but I mean, I think the design team have done a lot of work, and you'd hope that in events like this that we're explaining exactly what the purpose is, so that it's not necessarily that it'll get delayed. I mean, I think it's, but that's the planning process.
Okay.
And so we have to follow that religiously.
Okay, now, here's a question for you both. Does Dublin need another hotel?
Well, I suppose that's really a question for Delata, who are not in the room, unfortunately. I mean, they've made a decision that they're happy to operate it. So certainly, in terms of me, it's beyond my expertise to answer an economic question such as that.
Yeah. Peter?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Delata have a tremendous track record of running, great hotels in the city. It really, I think, is a huge contribution to this part of the city. It's going to create a lovely interface between Ballybock and Drumcondra. I think is all part of this whole urban rejuvenation, which is a strong part, I think, of the previous government in focusing investment in this area of the city. So I think a hotel is an important part of that statement.
Yeah.
So I think, if, before COVID broke out, if you wanted to get a hotel for a concert or for advance of a match, almost impossible to get, and the price per room were very, very high. So we were under-indexing in a number of hotel rooms. I think we're probably at the end of this planning process, planning sequence. There are a number of hotels that are going to be built across the city, and I think we'll get our balance back at that stage.
Yeah. Can you just remind, can you tell me and remind others, what hotels is Delata running in Dublin, just by way of information for people about where they are already?
Okay, there's their nearest hotel
not
is
all of them, but just
No,
Square.
they've just opened, Nolene, a new hotel on Charlemont Street,
Yeah.
which is along the canal. So they have a number of Maldron outlets,
Okay.
as well as Delata. So they're also involved in the Clayton
Okay.
hotel. So I
Okay.
think
Very
that's
good.
part
Well,
of the
very
network.
good. That's the model. That is that's the questions. Thanks a million to everybody for your engagement with this. It was really interesting. Shane, thanks for putting all that together so much and taking us through so much information in such a clear way. A reminder, the open day is on Saturday, but alas now it's totally booked up. People have come in this evening. I presume that the slides at some stage will be available. We'll be able to make those available in some ways, maybe through a PowerPoint or PDF that could be emailed to people. Would that be possible, Peter, do you think?
Well, equally, I mean, if the Saturday is now booked up, what we'll do is we'll run another evening.
Yeah,
And,
okay.
so, I mean, let not see this as being that if you're not in, you won't get to see.
Okay.
So, we'll run another evening. So keep putting the bookings in
All right.
to Julianne, and we'll organise another
Okay,
day.
okay, that's great. That's perfect. And we are looking at more information about the rest of the site in early enough July, about the 9th.
About the 9th of
that
July,
kind
yeah,
of that kind of time. So that is not that far away, actually. Well, it's about 3 weeks away. Yeah. So anyway, more information will be coming through. Thank you very much for everybody who put this together this evening. Shane, thanks a million for all of the information. Peter, thank you for organising it, and the ever-present Julianne as well, our floor manager, and we've 3 technicians here as well, and of course Emma, who has been running between here and there as well, supporting the process. So thanks a million to everybody. I hope that was of some value. I think it'd be interesting to get some feedback, Julianne, on whether people thought that was an interesting process. Not so much about the content, but just about, did this work for as long as we have to do it kind of remotely? Did this work, or are there things we could do better or differently? So with that, I'll say good night and have a nice evening, everyone. Thanks a
Nolly.
million.
Thank you.
And it's good night from me. Take care, Nelly. Thank you, boys. Thank you.
Thank you.